Socrates is one of the most influential figures in the history of Western philosophy. His ideas, teachings, and method of inquiry laid the foundation for subsequent philosophical developments in ancient Greece and beyond. Despite leaving no written works of his own, Socrates' ideas have been immortalized through the dialogues of his student, Plato, and later through the works of Xenophon and Aristophanes. Socrates' contributions to ethics, epistemology, and logic continue to resonate in modern philosophical discourse. His life, method of questioning, and tragic death by execution are crucial elements of his philosophical legacy. Early life of Socrates. Socrates was born in Athens around 469 BCE. Although little is known about his early life, it is believed that he was born into a modest family. His father, Sophroniskes, was a stonemason, while his mother, Phainarete, was a midwife. Socrates likely received a typical education for a young Athenian male of his time, which would have included training in rhetoric, music, and gymnastics. It is unclear how he first became interested in philosophy, but by his middle years, Socrates had become a prominent figure in the intellectual life of Athens. The Socratic method. One of Socrates' most lasting contributions to philosophy is the method of inquiry that bears his name, commonly known as the Socratic method. This method involves asking a series of questions to stimulate critical thinking and to draw out underlying assumptions in a person's beliefs. The goal is to encourage a deeper understanding of a subject and to expose contradictions in thought. For Socrates, this form of questioning was not merely a rhetorical exercise but a way to seek truth and knowledge. His method was particularly effective in discussions about ethics, justice, and virtue. Socrates and the Sophists. Socrates lived during a time when the Sophists were prominent in Athens. The Sophists were itinerant teachers who charged fees for instruction in rhetoric and offered guidance on how to succeed in public life. While the Sophists emphasized the importance of persuasive speech, Socrates was critical of their approach, accusing them of focusing on winning arguments rather than discovering the truth. Unlike the Sophists, Socrates claimed that he did not have all the answers, and his method was not about asserting knowledge but about fostering a process of inquiry. Socrates on virtue and knowledge. For Socrates, the concept of virtue was closely linked to knowledge. He famously asserted that virtue is knowledge, meaning that if someone knows what is right, they will act accordingly. Conversely, he believed that wrong actions stem from ignorance rather than malice. Socrates did not define virtue as a set of specific actions but as a deep understanding of the good. This intellectualist view of ethics differed significantly from the conventional wisdom of his time, which often equated virtue with adherence to societal norms or religious rituals. The trial of Socrates. In 401 BCE, Socrates was brought to trial in Athens on charges of corrupting the youth and impiety. His accusers claimed that Socrates was introducing new gods and undermining the traditional religious beliefs of the city. During the trial, as recounted in Plato's Apology, Socrates defended himself with his characteristic method of questioning, challenging his accusers to provide evidence for their claims. He argued that his role in Athens was to be a gadfly, a necessary irritant that provoked the city into critical self-examination. Socrates was ultimately found guilty by a jury of his peers, and he was sentenced to death by consuming poison hemlock. Socrates' view on death and the soul. In his trial and subsequent discussions, particularly in Plato's Phaedo, Socrates expressed his belief that death was not something to be feared. He viewed the soul as immortal and believed that death was merely the separation of the soul from the body. According to Socrates, those who had lived a just and virtuous life would enjoy a better existence in the afterlife. His calm acceptance of his fate and his willingness to die for his beliefs left a profound impact on his followers and subsequent generations of philosophers. Socrates' influence on Plato and Aristotle. Socrates' greatest philosophical legacy lies in his influence on his most famous student, Plato. Plato's dialogues, such as the Republic, the Apology, Crito, and Phaedo, present Socrates as the central figure in discussions about ethics, justice, politics, and the nature of reality. Through these dialogues, Plato elaborated on Socratic ideas, blending them with his own philosophical innovations, particularly his theory of forms. While Plato used Socratic ideas as a starting point, his student Aristotle would go on to critique and build upon both Socratic and Platonic thought, furthering the development of Western philosophy. Socratic ignorance. One of the most famous claims attributed to Socrates is his assertion that he knows nothing. This profession of ignorance, often referred to as Socratic ignorance, was not a literal admission of a lack of knowledge but a philosophical stance. Socrates believed that true wisdom came from recognizing the limits of one's knowledge. In Plato's Apology, Socrates recounts how he visited various supposedly wise men, politicians, poets, and craftsmen, and found that while they claimed to know much, they lacked true understanding. Socrates, by contrast, recognized his own ignorance, and this, he argued, made him wiser than those who falsely believed they knew everything. The legacy of Socratic philosophy. Socrates' influence did not end with his death. His life and ideas became the subject of intense study and debate among later philosophers. In addition to Plato and Aristotle, the Stoics, particularly Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, were deeply influenced by Socratic ethics. The Cynics, particularly Diogenes of Sinope, also adopted Socratic ideas about simplicity and the rejection of material wealth. In the medieval period, Socrates was viewed as a proto-Christian figure because of his emphasis on virtue and the immortality of the soul. During the Renaissance, humanists admired Socrates for his commitment to reason and intellectual inquiry. Even in modern philosophy, thinkers such as Friedrich Nietzsche, Michel Foucault, and Hannah Arendt have engaged with Socratic themes in their work. Socratic paradoxes. Socrates is known for several paradoxes that challenge conventional thinking. One of the most famous is the paradox of inquiry, also known as the Meno paradox, which is explored in Plato's dialogue Meno. The paradox questions how one can search for knowledge of something if one does not already know what it is. Socrates resolves this paradox by introducing the theory of recollection, suggesting that learning is a process of remembering knowledge that the soul already possesses. Another Socratic paradox is the claim that no one does wrong willingly. This idea, which is central to Socratic ethics, posits that all wrongdoing is the result of ignorance. According to Socrates, if people truly understood what was good, they would never act against it. Socrates and Athenian democracy. Socrates' relationship with Athenian democracy was complex. While he lived during the height of Athens' democratic experiment, he was critical of its functioning. Socrates questioned the idea that all citizens, regardless of their level of knowledge or expertise, should have an equal say in political decision-making. In Plato's dialogues, particularly the Republic, Socrates advocates for a government led by philosopher kings, individuals who possess the wisdom and virtue necessary to rule justly. However, Socrates' critiques of democracy should not be understood as a rejection of the concept of popular government itself, but rather as a call for a more informed and virtuous citizenry. Socrates' personal life and relationships. Although Socrates is primarily known for his philosophical contributions, his personal life has also attracted attention. Socrates was married to Xanthippe, who is often portrayed as a shrewish and difficult woman. However, some scholars believe that this portrayal may have been exaggerated by Socrates' students, who may have resented Xanthippe's efforts to keep Socrates focused on his family responsibilities. Socrates and Xanthippe had 3 sons, and despite his reputation as a detached philosopher, Socrates maintained strong relationships with his family and friends. The role of the oracle at Delphi. One of the most famous stories about Socrates comes from the oracle at Delphi. According to Plato's Apology, Socrates' friend Chaerephon visited the oracle and asked whether anyone was wiser than Socrates. The oracle responded that no one was wiser. Socrates interpreted this response as a riddle, since he believed he possessed no special wisdom. However, upon further reflection, he concluded that his wisdom lay in his recognition of his own ignorance. This episode played a significant role in shaping Socrates' philosophical mission and his approach to questioning those who claimed to have knowledge. Socrates and piety. In addition to his focus on ethics and virtue, Socrates also engaged with questions of piety and religious belief. One of the central charges against him during his trial was that he did not believe in the gods of Athens. However, Socrates denied this accusation, claiming that he did believe in the divine but that his conception of the gods differed from traditional Athenian beliefs. In Plato's dialogue Euthyphro, Socrates famously asks whether something is good because the gods command it, or whether the gods command it because it is good. This question, known as the Euthyphro dilemma, has become one of the central debates in the philosophy of religion. The philosophy of Socrates is characterized by a relentless pursuit of truth, a commitment to ethical inquiry, and a deep belief in the power of reason and dialogue. Although he left no written works, Socrates' ideas have been preserved and expanded upon by his students, most notably Plato. His method of questioning, his views on virtue and knowledge, and his willingness to challenge societal norms have left a profound and enduring mark on the history of Western philosophy. Socrates' legacy continues to inspire thinkers, encouraging us to examine our beliefs, seek wisdom, and engage in meaningful dialogue. His life and death stand as a testament to the importance of philosophy in the pursuit of a just and virtuous life. Through his teachings, Socrates has achieved a form of immortality, his name forever associated with the quest for truth.